Well, this is kind of flying under the radar. Did you know that as of today, there are quite a few Americans in Gaza, not direct government employees per se, but private contractors, and a lot of them, which of course raises the concern, what happens if Americans, in this case operating under an aid organization and for security contractors, are killed in Gaza? Does it run the risk of pulling the United States further into this conflict? Well, that all happened pretty fast. It looks like these aid distribution points have now been overrun. So, that's not great. Positive news, it doesn't sound like as of now there's any reports of any shooting, anybody being killed or seriously wounded, but we've got a couple of videos I'm going to play here showing what appears to be these aid distribution points being completely overrun and looted. In fact, reports out of Gaza right now are that the entire distribution complexes set up by the American company were destroyed. Food packages were looted by the Gazans, and the company personnel withdrew from the scene, citing complete loss of control. They say the American company employees were firing shots into the air, kind of warning shots. The IDF is not taking part in this. It looks like it's been handed off to the American security personnel on the ground. But again, it sounds like they've regained control of the distribution center, but this is the risk of having American personnel on the ground in Gaza, right? You see, like, you can blink, and all of a sudden we're turning into some sort of lethal engagement. But nonetheless, the rest of today's video does get into some more details about what to expect should this humanitarian project continue on, and some of the risks associated with American personnel on the ground that have already shown to be true. So today we're going to get into what we know so far about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that, again, in my opinion, is kind of being underreported given the volume of Americans, the number of Americans that are likely directly involved on the ground in Gaza. Now, this foundation was stood up just earlier this year, so it's a new organization, American organization based here in the United States with a goal of distributing aid inside of the Gaza Strip. They were formed through a collaboration, to our understanding, of American intelligence officials, business executives, and Israeli authorities. A good way to look at this is a U.S. company, but it's a joint U.S.-Israeli plan. Now, the foundation, a lot of this is murky, so bear with me. Intentionally or unintentionally, there's a lot that's not known about this group right now, partially because they're so new. But the group says that they have secured over $100 million so far in commitments. It's not entirely clear where those funds are coming from. Are they running some sort of grassroots campaign to collect donors from around the world? Is it government funding? We don't know. Now, they have received support. The Trump administration, the Netanyahu government both support this initiative, but it's not clear if that support has made its way into material support beyond just saying we like this idea, or even some sort of financial support. That, again, isn't yet known. But the overall strategy here, and I want you to just keep in the back of your mind, additional Americans on the ground in an ongoing combat zone. This is not the same as, putting soldiers somewhere. We tend to view that very, very differently here in the United States, but this is going to be the largest group of American personnel in Gaza since the war began. There are risks that come with that. Say the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's aid distribution strategy involves establishing 4 guarded distribution hubs in southern Gaza near Israeli military positions. These centers are designed to serve over 1 million Palestinians initially. The foundation's approach includes biometric screening to prevent aid from reaching individuals affiliated with Hamas. And this is already a point of contention, and understandably so. A lot of the Palestinians are worried here that this is just going to be used as some long-term surveillance tool. Capture more biometric data from the civilians in Gaza, and however this war comes to a close, Israel has all that data at their fingertips. It also, just in practice, is going to be a challenge. In order for this to be effective, it means that Israel must have, at this point, all the documentation to know right now who is Hamas, who's affiliated with Hamas. Because if they don't have that data, they have nothing to compare it against. And there's just, to be blunt, there's no way they have that, top to bottom. So there's going to be a lot of guesswork involved here. And then you have to ask, at what point do you cut off aid? Right? If you have a Hamas fighter coming up asking for food, got it. Maybe don't give him anything. What about the brother of a known Hamas militant? Cousin? Second cousin? Grandfather? Like, they may or may not be involved. What about just material? What about support? right? So they're not actually fighting for Hamas, but we know Israel is able to identify that this one individual maybe at some point a few years ago allowed Hamas to use their garage to store weapons. Are they cut off from aid? Do you see how messy this gets quickly? Nonetheless, that seems to be the plan right now under the GHF. Let's see, they say under this mechanism, security screened Palestinians will be expected to collect boxes containing food and basic hygiene items for their families from a small number of distribution sites. The sites, and this is important, will be secured by American contractors with Israeli troops patrolling the perimeters. Those American contractors, our understanding right now, is coming from an organization called Safe Reach Solutions, SRS, which is an American private security firm founded by Philip Riley, a former CIA officer. It's not clear at this point if those security contractors are American. The company is. That does not automatically mean that the people on the ground working for them are American. Now, in some of the pictures, I'm not sure if the pictures are accurate or not, showing some of these individuals. They generally try to keep a low profile. They look Western for what it's worth. They look like former U.S. military. Of course, I wouldn't take that to the bank, just an observation. Nonetheless, if even the leadership inside of those organizations are American citizens, it does raise the risk profile for us here in the United States pretty substantially now that they're going to be in and around these distribution sites working security side by side with Israel. Now, the foundation's original executive director, Jake Wood, a former Marine, I believe, just resigned a few days ago, which is a bit of a red flag when the executive director of an organization like this steps down right when they move into the implementation phase. He said that the group could not work in a way that would be able to fulfill the principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. And with that, I thought it was worth getting into some of the pushback from the outside. We're going to get into some pushback from the Palestinians here inside of Gaza in a moment. But as of now, the United Nations and other humanitarian groups have refused to participate in this GHF-led distribution, arguing that the plan politicizes aid, lacks neutrality, and could lead to forced displacement by directing aid through militarized zones. And you can see that when looking at the map. If you're in Gaza right now and you want to be on the receiving end of aid, are you really going to be close or far away from some of these distribution points? And how long before you decide it just makes more sense to kind of be in that southwest corner where most of these aid points are set up, which in turn is kind of a, call it direct, call it indirect displacement of the Palestinian people. Now, adding to some of these concerns as to how this program is going to be implemented and if it could be actually used as a tool of war, I want to turn now to Philip Turla. Apologies for the pronunciation there. He's the international affairs editor at France 24, talking about this very issue. Let's give that a listen.
Now, there are also claims and a lot of suspicion behind the scenes about the ultimate goal of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That's to say that it's not really set up to operate like a normal humanitarian organization. What it wants to do is to feed civilians who can get to the distribution centers, these 4 centers in central, basically southern Gaza, and then not hand out any food to any person who is suspected of being a member of Hamas or who is known to be a member of Hamas. That's to say, to starve Hamas out, to weaken them so that they will then have to surrender. So it's not being used as a humanitarian organization, but as an arm of war or a war weapon to try to weaken Hamas further. And therefore, it's not being created with an objective decision-making body, but more or less under the auspices and under the desires of the Israeli government.
Now, turning over to the IDF, who put out some pretty long statements earlier today, along with videos and pictures that I'll share here of this operation.
During this war, the IDF has facilitated the entry of over 1.7 million tons of aid into Gaza. What has Hamas done? Hamas has looted that and prevented it from reaching the people of Gaza directly. We're standing here in this logistical area that the IDF built and will secure and will be run by a third party that will give the people of Gaza the aid directly. Every day, thousands of Gazans will be able to come here, reach this third party, and get the aid directly. We hope this will end Hamas's abuse of the aid coming into Gaza, Hamas's abuse of the people of Gaza, and that the people of Gaza will be able to receive the aid directly.
In their statement earlier today, they said as part of the American initiative, aid distribution centers established in the Gaza Strip, operated by international aid organizations and secured by an American civilian security company. So Again, there's probably a couple different ways to interpret that. They want to show that we're working together, perhaps, or also kind of offloading in case this goes poorly, saying that was the Americans and those international aid organizations couldn't figure it out. Now, they say as part of the ongoing efforts to facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, 4 distribution centers have been set up in accordance with the directive of the political echelon and in close coordination with the United States. These centers are operated by international aid organizations and secured by American security company personnel. Say as part of the gradual opening of the distribution centers, 2 of the centers located in Tel al-Sultan, the Marag corridor, and the Rafah area began operating today, Tuesday, and are distributing food packages to thousands of families in the Gaza Strip. They say the establishment of the distribution centers took place over the last few months. Again, I personally feel like that really went under the radar. There was not a lot of information about this. As somebody who's trying to stay on top of this war, this really slipped through the cracks and was not getting a lot of attention. They say the process coincided with an ongoing dialogue and cooperation with the IDF through the Southern Command and COGAT, as well as international aid organizations and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and the American Civilian Security Company. And then they wrap up by saying the IDF will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance in the Gaza Strip while making every possible effort to ensure that the aid does not reach the hands of the Hamas terrorist organization. And with that, I thought it would be worth taking a look here at some reactions coming out of Gaza from Palestinian citizens on the ground. This is some reporting from Andrew Fox over on X, who said some messaging going around on different apps, calls out a couple different things that I want to highlight. Quote, 500 American security personnel will be stationed around each aid center. If that's true, that would mean right now 1,000 American security personnel up to 2,000 when all of the aid distribution centers are set up. Again, are they Americans? Are they just American hired guns? Either way. In addition to the presence of occupation forces 300 meters away in each center, with entry lanes using eye scans. Female soldiers will search women along with exit lanes. Tuk-tuks, so like motorcycles with added wheels in the back, like small trucks you can pile things on. Tuk-tuks will also be permitted within 300 meters. There will be scrutiny of the cases of martyrs' wives, so killed Hamas members, their wives, and no one other than the head of the household will be permitted to receive aid, even if he is ill or elderly. I feel like that's going to be really hard to prove. The tracking casualties in Gaza has been an absolute nightmare from the get-go. The idea that, the head of household is no longer like, what if the oldest male is 4? How do you do this, right? Also, how many households still remain? And I know they're talking about family, not necessarily physical structure, but that would be incredibly complicated in the best of circumstances. It is not the best of circumstances right now in Gaza. They say significant difficulties are expected with the long lines of beneficiaries, given the lack of clarity on the details of the weekly aid fund, including its weight, size, and the ability to carry it to the tuk-tuks. Again, those small motorcycle-like trucks. And they give out 3 warnings here for anybody that wants to go receive this aid. 1, do not go to collect aid if your husband was among those who entered Israel on October 7th, actively participated in the Great March of Return activities, or was promoted during or before the war and has a military record in the organizations. So there's the biometric easy one, right? Find out pretty quickly. That is all data that Israel would have at this point. So just telling those folks, too bad, don't do it. 2, do not go to collect if you've been imprisoned by Israel for security reasons, even for throwing stones 40 years ago. I think that's probably right. Again, if Israel's trying to dial in their biometric data, they've probably got to toss a pretty wide net, and they're going to be going back as far as they can. Anybody's data that's popping up in the system for any sort of criminal offense is probably going to it's going to pop hot. That might risk the person being detained short-term or indefinitely. 3, every person has the right to decide for themselves whether or not to go. Those who go will not be collaborators, and those who refuse will not be honorable. The classification is unacceptable, and the association is suspicious. We will not remain silent regarding those who abuse and distribute certificates of honor and patriotism. This is following I don't know if it came directly from Hamas or just some loud voices. I didn't see it on any official Hamas statements, but some pushback to this program saying, don't give in and accept aid from this American-Israeli venture that's giving in to the enemy. And that was met with some harsh criticism, understandably so, right out the gate. Like, which one is it? If there truly are, and I believe there are people that genuinely need food and medical support inside the Gaza Strip, then who on earth is going to say, yeah, but that aid isn't good enough. That food isn't good enough. That medical support isn't good enough. So they're just kind of hammering on that point. Like, go, receive the aid, stay alive, give it to your children, whatever it might be. But nonetheless, a lot of this is still pretty murky, and we'll see how today plays out. Hopefully, there are no security incidents. We're going to see large gatherings of civilians around each one of these aid locations, likely lines for, kilometers, miles, maybe even. Hopefully there's no mortars lobbed by Hamas, no small arms fire off in the distance that could put at risk what is likely to be long lines of civilians, again, with American security personnel operating alongside the IDF. But either way, this is going to be something worth keeping an eye on as it continues to play out in the Gaza Strip. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.